minutes of questioning. We know that Mexico is the big launching pad of drugs to the United States. And those drugs come from either Honduras or Venezuela or Colombia or Mexico itself. So tell me, what else can Mexicans do at this hour? As I said during my opening statements, we understand them. We recognize publicly that they are helping us more than ever, and that President Sheinbaum is having a closer relationship with the State Department and with the law enforcement agencies in the United States to stop that flow from Mexico. What else could they do that they're not doing? I understand about the non-intervention. I understand that it's very difficult for Mexicans to allow the Americans to step on their soil. But what else is this hour that is so crucial in this drug of this war that we have with the drug cartels? What else can they do specifically?
There are a number of things, and I do want to reiterate that the cooperation is at a level that we have not seen. And we have had success on a level that we have not seen in a long time with Mexico. There are a number of things to close the border to these organizations that are pushing drugs up in the United States. They have put National Guard up against the borders, but increasing the number of forces on the borders, expanding the use of non-intrusive inspection equipment along the entire border, increasing the cooperation between the border forces, CBP on the United States side and the Mexican side, so that we're sharing information better, so that we have better control of what's going across the border, going north with drugs and illegal immigrants, but going south with trafficking of arms, for example, which are then feeding the violent criminal organizations. Working with the Central Americans, specifically Guatemala and Belize, to close those borders. There was a meeting of the three presidents. They are making advancements, but that's an area where that's an uncontrolled area. That's an area where there is possible U.S. support, and where it could be a choke point for the entire northern continent. I think further expanding on the trusted units.
Why do you think that President Sheinbaum is not giving the green light for us to be able to help her in those areas that you just mentioned?
Well, I do think I do think President Sheinbaum is moving in all of these areas. I think we'd like to see more. We'd like to see more resources dedicated to security. They are increasing the amount of resources in their 2026 budget, but we need to see more resources in security. This is a shared problem. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have died over the last 10 years from fentanyl and other drugs, but many, many Mexicans have died from the violence of these criminal groups. We need to see more across the board. We've been explicit with them. Another aspect we'd like to see is President Trump reached an agreement with President Xi Jinping on controlling precursor chemicals exports to basically the three North American countries. We would like to see the Mexican government talk to China on a regular basis and press them on the precursors, because almost all the precursors are coming from China to Mexico to make the fentanyl.
And why do you think that has not happened?
Well, I think to some extent they have. I do not think it has been to this point as forceful as we have been on the precursor issue. I mean, it was a huge success achieved by the president to control these 13 precursors, and the Chinese government also issued an advisory about controlling the trade, similar to how they've issued advisories related to methamphetamine precursors. So the Chinese are working on this. We need to see other countries. This is the same message that we've given the European countries as well. We need to see a unified approach with China and other possible sources of precursors. We'd like to see the Mexicans step up their game in that way.
Now, let me just change course. I just mentioned about the Mexican doctors. Mexican doctors is something that is worldwide known. It's not only Mexico, but it happens in Africa, it happens in Jamaica, it happens everywhere, where the Cuban government sends them as slaves. And as I said, they never acquire, they can never earn what their salary says. We know that. It's something that it's widely known. That violates the USMCA provisions of human trafficking or slavery or forced labor, whatever provision you want to call it. So what are we planning to do next year when we're reviewing the USMCA with Mexico to send a very strong message that we are not going to allow for that to continue happening with one of our partners? What is your response to that?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to start, if I may, by acknowledging your tireless advocacy for people throughout the hemisphere living in oppressed situations and leading against authoritarian and dictatorial regimes, not just in Cuba, but Nicaragua and Venezuela as well. It's very useful as we seek to try to restore rights to people who've been deprived of them. Agreed, and thank you. With respect to the Cuban doctors program, we agree with you entirely. It's very cynical how the Cuban government has been able to dress up a trafficking in persons program as a noble gesture for a fee to governments for medical services. So we are taking a global push to encourage countries around the world, urge them to step out of this program to either
But in this case, we have a free trade agreement with Mexico that specifically says that you cannot do that. That's not a behavior that's acceptable if you are going to be trading with the United States. It's our duty right now that treaty is going to be reviewed to look into that. So what's your plan for next year?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, they do have the second largest medical missions program in the world with 3,650 medical workers. With respect to USMCA, I would have to defer to USTR, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office on that, but I will say that we continue to raise this issue at all levels of the Mexican government. The Secretary has raised it. I was in Mexico last week and spoke to the Acting Foreign Secretary about it myself, and we will continue to push them on it.
Thank you very much. I don't want to abuse my time. I want to give the opportunity to Ranking Member Castro for the next 5 minutes. Thank you.